in a little town, nothing town, a little province of a little country in the backwater of the Roman Empire, a child is born, and the entire age is going to hang on that moment. In the year of our Lord, what does that mean? It means the same thing that virtually every date in the world means, that every event that is marked with a year is connected to a specific event, the event that took place in Bethlehem that we are celebrating tonight. And here is the scripture, Galatians 4, verse 1. Now I say, as long as the heir is a child, he doesn't differ from a slave in the house, although he's the owner of everything, but he's under guardians and managers until the date set by the Father. So also we, while we were children, were held in bondage to the elemental things of the world. But when the fullness of the time came, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, the Torah, so that he might redeem those who were under the Torah, under the law, that we might receive the adoption as sons, children. Because you are children, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying out, Abba, Father. Therefore you are no longer a slave, but you are a child, a son, and if so, you are an heir through God. A few weeks ago, we were singing Christmas carols over the actual land of Bethlehem at night. And we all have our pictures of Bethlehem, nativity scenes, Christmas cards, holiday specials, starlight music. But to try to find those things today is another story. To try to find this in Bethlehem today is a totally other story. A few years back, on our tour to Israel, a number of years back, we went to Bethlehem. It was a time when, in order to go to Bethlehem, you had to go to a security. There's still a security thing because it is not in the area that Israel has sovereignty over. You stop at a security barrier. You had to switch buses from the Israeli buses to the Palestinian buses with a Palestinian tour guide. And you go into Bethlehem. We went to Bethlehem, a whole different feeling, not the feeling of safety and peace on earth. One of our women was stalked by a carload of men following her. We were taken to the Church of the Nativity, incense, candles, a million things, all these things, but not an iota of the sense of the actual Bethlehem or the scenery or what it would have been like. It's so removed from what it would have been like in the simplicity of that first Christmas. And the guide was going to show us more things like that. And finally I said, listen, just take us outside. Take us to a field. Take us to a hill. Take us something that has nothing. And finally, he did that, and that was the highlight of our time there. It was just land, and you could actually get a feeling or imagine what it was like for the Mary and Joseph and the whole thing there. It was the coolest part. We were singing songs. It was the best part. When we got out of Bethlehem, people were literally hugging they literally kissing our drivers. And people said, please don't ever take us back there again. And I said, well, because you cannot find, very hard to find Bethlehem in Bethlehem today. So after that, we did something different. We found a place in another future tours, a hill overlooking Bethlehem at night. And at the edge of Bethlehem, and you could see Bethlehem. You didn't see all the details, but you see it's lights at night. It's like you could imagine it being ancient. You can even see stars above it. And we worshiped the Lord, and we sang Christmas carols, and it was wonderful. With a little glitch, once we found some land in a hill that would have been undoubtedly pasture land, shepherd lands. The shepherds would have gone there one time or another. And it was beautiful, except that we're about to worship at night on the hill. The president of the tour company comes down, Colonel Shalom, and he comes down and he says, with a look of panic on his face, he says, Rabbi, he says, we have to get out of here. I said, what do you mean? He said, there may be mines here. I said, what? He said, mines, they could blow up. I said, what? He said, you got to get them back. I said, but if we go back, we can step on it. We could blow up then. We have to go back anyway. I said, so if we're going to blow up, we might as well sing the Christmas songs and then blow up. Because if we blow up without doing the Christmas songs, people are going to be disappointed. So I announced to everybody, okay, I don't want to panic everybody. I say, we're going to sing the songs, stay completely still. Don't move, don't dance. And I'm not saying why, I'm just saying you have to stay exactly still. And I'm having these visions of us singing, joy to the world, the Lord is, Let earth receive her. You know, I mean, boom, like Survivor of Bethlehem. You know, who's going to be left? It turned out Colonel Shalom was overreacting. There were no mines there, but he didn't know that. And it was the most nerve-wracking Christmas thing where it's gonna, that I ever had in my life. But it wasn't about finding Bethlehem. And the reason it wasn't is what we're going to talk about tonight. Paul said, in the fullness of time, God sent his son. What is that? In the fullness of time, the world at that time, Roman Empire, Augustus Caesar reigning over the known world there. The Roman Empire only came into existence not long before that, maybe within 2 decades of that, the Roman Empire came into existence. The Roman poet Virgil's composing his songs. Rome extends its borders to Europe, or the upper part of Danube, Europe, Britain, Ireland, Germany. Around this time, France, largely made up of those who Rome saw as barbarians. In the east, there's the kingdom of China, India, Parthia. The population of the world is about 250 million, they estimate. The world is all over the world are idols and gods and sacrifices. In the east, there's an elite group of pagan priests called the Magi, studying the stars, looking up for something new to happen. On the eastern shores of the Mediterranean, at the eastern end of the Roman Empire, is Judea. The Jewish people, subjugated by Rome, but a people hard for anyone to rule over. And there is on the throne a man named Herodes, or Herod, coming from the word hero. Herod the Great, convert to Judaism, a tyrant, a despot, a paranoid, killing those close to him, killing his own family, people in his family, hated by the Jewish people, never accepted, yet trying to win the approval by building great projects, working on rebuilding the temple. Now he's old, decrepit, at the end of his life. Much of his time's in depression, sickness is on him, he's infirm. The Jewish religion, the Jewish faith, rather, is led by the high priest, officially by the Sadducees, a small group of Greek-influenced Jewish people, liberal. They don't believe a lot in the Bible, largely in control of the temple. The Pharisees are seeking to be holy, supposedly. That's how the movement started, but now they're adding, and into self-righteousness as well. There are those who want to revolt against Rome. They're known as the Zealots. And then there are other sects who are living in the desert or trying to escape it all, or just trying to get purity with God. Some called the Essenes, who see the corruption of the temple establishment, and they await the kingdom of God. Augustus, the Caesar, declares a census of the Roman Empire to tax the known world. In Judea, this means a great migration of you have to go to your ancestral home, so you be grouped together. When was the fullness of time? That is the stage upon which this all takes place and God appears. Luke 2 puts it this way. Now it came about in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that a census be taken to all the inhabited earth. Matthew. Now after Yeshua, Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea. In the days of Herod, the king, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem. In the days of Herod. Herod began ruling in 37 BC. Matthew 2:19, when Herod was dead, it says, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream in Egypt, saying, arise now, take the child, his mother, go back to the land of Israel. Those who sought to kill the child are dead. So he got up, went back. So Messiah had to be born before Herod died. Now Herod died in 4 BC, in the springtime. And we know that. So what does that tell you? Messiah was born BC. He had to be. He wasn't born the year 1. He was born BC. Messiah was born before Christ. And so here it is. And not only that's 4 BC, but he couldn't have been born in 4 BC. Because by the time Herod gets it, what did he say? He said, basically, he wanted to find out when they saw the star. And he said, therefore, kill the children of Bethlehem who are 2 and under. Mostly what that means is the star appeared 2 years before. Now, did the birth have to happen at that time? It didn't have to, but most likely it did. But that gives you a range of 6 BC. And then you're going to the death at 4 BC. So it goes on. Now, there was a census there. It says there was a census that took place. Now, when was the census? Well, until the 20th century, we had no idea of when any census was. But in Turkey, they uncovered an inscription giving a list of years in which the Roman census were taken. One of them was 8 BC. Now, this doesn't mean the census was taken in 8 BC, or rather, the order was issued by Augustus that a census be taken. Now, it took a long time to get a census together throughout the Roman Empire. And especially took time to organize it in each part, communication. Countries like Judea are near the edge of the Roman Empire. So the census that it's talking about most likely took place in 7 or 6 BC, which fits in perfectly. Now, a fascinating connection. Daniel was given a revelation of when the timing of Messiah, when he would come. That's Daniel 9, the 70 weeks of Daniel. He gives a countdown, a mathematical countdown of when Messiah had to come. And no matter what, he had to come before the temple was destroyed. But you could follow that countdown, and some have found it going all the way to 30 AD, amazingly. But regardless, Daniel was one of the captives taken to Babylon. And then the Persians took over. The Magi were Persian. Daniel was under first Nebuchadnezzar, but then he was under Cyrus, Persian. Darius, Persian. So here you have Daniel in the court of Persia. The Magi were Persian. They were of that caste. They were of that throne. In Jeremiah, it speaks of one there who is called the chief of the Magdim, or the Magi. In the court of Nebuchadnezzar, they're called Magi. There's references in Daniel of these wise men who interpret dreams. They are undoubtedly linked to the Magi, or they are the Magi. Daniel, it says, was appointed to lead them. Now, put this together. Daniel, fascinating possibility that some of the Magi, if Daniel is leading them, he would have taught them of God, and he would have taught them of the prophecies. And he had the revelation of the exact coming of Messiah. So there's a good chance that it would have been passed down by the Magi, that at some point in this time, they may not have known well, they may not have put it, but at some point, Messiah is going to come around here. The King of the Jews is coming. That would make sense of why they would be ready for it. There are fascinating references. You know, it said that from Roman sources that there were expectation that a ruler would arise from Judah at that time, a great king. And the Roman historians, Suetonius and Tacitus, both wrote that there existed an expectation throughout the East that out of Judea at that time would arise a king of the world. So the Magi most likely had an expectation already. And so there they were looking to the stars, because they were astrologers, which back then is almost the same as astronomers, except they believe, because there was nothing else, except they believed that these things were all signs. Now, the ancient people thought that if you saw a strange thing in heaven, the comet coming, a sudden appearance of a star, could predict the fall. A comet could predict the fall of leaders. A new star would be a new king. So it says they saw his star. Where is he who is born King of the Jews? King and Jews. Now, the Star of Bethlehem, it's interesting, something just came out in the news. Another person's talking about a conjunction back then of planets, and it goes around 6 BC, which is around the same time. But the Star of Bethlehem had to be something supernatural because it leads them. It leads them to a specific place. But even if they saw a star suddenly appear, if God caused this thing to appear, why would they connect that with Judea or the Jewish king? I mean, maybe from Daniel. But interesting, because some of the rabbinic writers say that that they spoke about certain parts of the stars that were associated with certain things. They said when Saturn, the planet Saturn and Jupiter came together in a constellation of the fish, that was they would link it to Messiah. Jupiter was the king, was thought of, so it had to do something to do with a king. To the Magi, the fish, they said, was a sign of the west. That's Israel and the Mediterranean. And some of the ancient historians said that Saturn was linked to Judea to the Jews. And so you actually have this convergence of all these things, or mostly in the ancient time around 6 BC. So that could have primed them already, thinking the time of the King of the Jews is near. And then suddenly they see this thing from God, this star. And this all converges to the spring of 6 BC. And there are many other reasons that point. I'm not going to go into it. I did a message called AD, or on the birth of Messiah. But that links with this exact time on the Hebrew calendar, an exact Hebrew holy day. We will not get off. But let's say, so here they are, the Magi set off on a search. They're flawed. They don't know God, but they have some sense they're yearning for God. And so God is leading them. They're open to God. They're journeying across the east to Judea, to Jerusalem, to Herod, and then to Bethlehem. It lines up with all these things around the spring of 6 BC. Now, the main thing, more important, whenever he came, is that he came. But most likely, that's where it all kind of goes. Now, the fullness of time. According to the biblical evidence, and correlated by the ancient historian Josephus, Jewish, for the death of Herod, we know no matter what, Messiah had to have been born before 4 BC and around most likely 6 BC. Setting at that time a pagan world. Caesar is in his palace. Herod is in his palace. The Chinese emperors are in their palaces. The high priest is in the temple. Magi are in their place. And we come to a town a few miles south of Jerusalem. You could literally see Bethlehem from Jerusalem. Bethlehem in Hebrew, the house of bread. Here, the perfect place for the coming of the bread of life. A Jewish woman named Miriam, Jewish man named Joseph, probably young, very young. Miriam is probably, you've heard it, probably a teenager, most likely. Traveling down, they have come down from Galilee, most likely following the Jordan River, rough, rugged terrain for the registration of the Roman census. She is ready to give birth, but they're traveling. Many hills. There's a lot of hills going on. Pasture land. Bethlehem is still land of sheep pasture. Many shepherds. They come for shelter. Pregnant wife. They cannot find any room. Most likely it's a time of a traveling season, so we know it also, another reason it's not going to be winter. Probably around the time of a pilgrimage. I believe it was just before Passover, springtime. But there's no room. They go to a place where animals feed for shelter. You picture the whole scene, and it's a nice stable. It doesn't ever say stable. It says manger, meaning, manja simply means it's a feeding place for animals. Could be in a cave, could have been outside near a house, could have been whatever. But here it is, it's a place for animals to eat. The Jewish virgin named Miriam gives birth to Messiah. She gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in cloths, it says. This is the fullness of time. It is now, even though they got the monk later on got the timing a little bit off, technically it is now AD. It went from BC to AD, and nobody knew it. The change of the covenants, the old and new covenant, is going to happen a few decades later when Messiah dies on the cross and rises. That's the change of the old to new covenant. But this is also the BC AD. This is the corner of history. Amazing thing. The world will mark everything by it. It's amazing to think about it. When Richard Wurmbrand was interrogated, a believer in Romania, under the communists, he was interrogated, and they said, give me one proof of your faith, that he exists. Give me one proof of Jesus. He says, he doesn't exist, never did. And he said, I just believe what the Communist Party says. He says, what? What do you mean? He says that he saw the paper. He says, show me the paper, which was the communist official paper. He says, what does it say? And he picks it up. What does it say by the title? He says, the title. He said, no, next to the title. It says 1951. Those are the years dating back to what? Dating back to the birth of Messiah. I said, so if even the communist paper, this is official communist teaching, then I'm going to go along with it. Here, this little manger, this little section of the outside, the inn, whatever that was, a place, in a little town, nothing town, a little province of a little country in the backwater of the Roman Empire. A child is born, and the entire age is going to hang on that moment. Amazing. The whole age is going to change. Soon, virtually every person born on this planet will mark every event of their life by that event in Bethlehem. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? I find it totally amazing. By this one event, even though, again, the calculation is slightly off, yet at this time, everything, it teaches us something. Often the most important events and central events happen in a little corner in the quiet. The most important things in your life happen in the quiet with God. The greatest things come often in the smallest, unlikely ways. What appears to be the greatest things are often little things in the sight of heaven. Starting with the Lord in your heart, that was a quiet thing. For many of you, it did happen. A lot of people didn't know what was going on, but you did. That was your Bethlehem. Nobody really sees it, but nobody really knows what's happening, but it changes the rest of your life. Just like Bethlehem. It starts out small. Maybe you barely felt it. Some of you didn't even feel it when you were saved, but then it changed your whole life. That's Bethlehem. No room at the inn. Amazing thing. This pivotal event, the most pivotal event, and nobody has room for it. What was going to change the world? If anybody knew back then what was going on, they would have said, please come. We'll vacate the house. Come into our house. The whole world is going to change. And there was no room for the most important event. So often the most important events, there's no room in this world for the most important things in your life. And that is the presence of God. It was in the quiet. In the fullness of time, God sent forth his word and sent forth his son. Now, in Greek, it doesn't say that. I love the expression, in the fullness of time. In Greek, it says, in the playroma. Try it. You are so mellow. You get some more life. You're not Baptist. Playroma. Yeah, well, some of you are Baptists. It's okay. Playroma. Now, the thing is, the playroma, you should know this word. This is the fullness, playroma chronos, the fullness of time. What does it mean? What does it mean, this fullness of time? Playroma comes from the root that means to fill up, to complete, like you're filling up a cup. A cup is empty, and you're filling up that cup. To perfect, to supply. The picture is of literally like pouring water into a vessel. That is playroma. You're making it full. You're filling it up. And like when it talks about when the fullness of the Gentiles has come, then that's the playroma. Well, now it says this was the playroma of time. What is that? Playroma of time. What is that? Playroma, it is the filling up of time. It's the fullness of this is the moment of moments. God is filling this up. And it says also, it talks about the filling of the law. Everything is being filled up. And so what this is saying is, it's a different concept of time. Because we have a concept of time as we go from event to event to event, but that's not the Hebrew concept. The Hebrew concept is something different. In the Hebrew concept, it speaks of time getting filled up. It's like there's a purpose of God, there's a prophecy, and then comes the moment of the playroma. Then comes the moment that what God had is going to be filled. It's going to come to its fullness. Things are waiting for the fullness of God's purposes. It's the filling up of time. It's the accomplishing of time. When Messiah came, it was that, in this one event, all these prophecies, the prophecy of Micah, the prophecy, you will be born in Bethlehem, it's come to its playroma, it's come to its fullness, it's come to its shalom, it's come to that moment. The prophecies of the son of David being born, they're all converging into this one moment, the playroma, the fullness of time. This is a totally Hebrew event. See, most of the world back then, they viewed time as meaningless. It's a cycle. Everything's a cycle. Nothing changes. But in Hebrew, very different. It's that everything has a purpose. There's a purpose. There's a point. There's a destiny. There's a destination. There's a plan of God. There's a purpose. And so we're waiting for the fulfillment, the fullness of God's purposes in the world and in our lives.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Cahn, and I hope you were blessed with the video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Feel free to share your reactions with your comments and how you were blessed, and share this video with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.